Yo, it's been a while. Yeah, I want to talk about this Archon Chapter 5 Natlan Interlude quest because it was really short. I wasn't expecting it to be so short. When it ended, I was like, wait, what? We're not gonna go continue the interlude into the new area somewhere? Like maybe finding more about Natlan in general but I guess they're just saving all of the more important lore stuff for the actual Archon quest instead of the interlude. But I think that even though this was pretty short, it was still succinct and concise with some of the storytelling and some of the after effects of the Abyssal invasion. And we get some cool Capitano lore and some tidbits about Iansan here and there, which was pretty nice. And actually some interesting things about the whole lore that's on the Xbox glider, because the Genshin is now on Xbox. So I'm going to talk about that at the end, but yeah, I just want to go over the interlude quest and some of my thoughts on it. So yeah, basically we pick up off Act 4, where after the Abyssal invasion that just happened, the tribes of Natlan are pretty much trying to build things back up and fix back up all of the tribes. So the Flower Feather clan got hit the hardest, and especially because Chaska's sister died, Choichu, so rip Choichu. And we pretty much spend the entire interlude quest with Iansan, so we get to know her a little bit. And we find that pretty much there are people that are experiencing PTSD basically from the abyssal effects. So some of the corrosion got to them, leading them into some PTSD with them in being mentally unwell. And we want to help 3 of them. So even though these 3 that we help are NPCs, I thought that the stories that we were telling with them and the themes showing up in them were pretty concise and to the point, which was good. And that I enjoyed them. So for example, for the first one, so this person, Atoko, he's pretty much feeling like he's always cold, like he's always drowning, and that sort of relates to his childhood where one of the Kukusaurus that saved him was because he was drowning previously, and so now his sort of trauma from that is resurfacing because of the PTSD. And so we, take on the appearance of a Kukusaurus and try to get them back to his senses, in which we do. And, unfortunately, the Kukusaurus, Dorte, that had helped him when he was a kid, that Kukusaurus had passed away years ago, and he's still kind of agonizing over it, but Iansan pretty much tells him that, hey, we need to move on from this and accept death, because that's been a theme with Natlan. We just accept death, right? So yeah, there's the next person that we help, Kochita. Basically, her theme and story revolves around her being a warrior, but she was always scared to fight. Like, she wasn't born to be a fighter, but yet when she was young, she had to because she wanted to protect her brother from an abyssal monster. And so, because of that whole incident, she became a fighter for Natlan, but still, it was not something that she really wanted to do. And so her current state is that she's in a state of fear because she just doesn't want to fight any of the monsters. Thematically even, it's her little brother that steps up and does exactly what she did when they were younger. And he's the one stepping up to try and protect her, even though he's scared, right? So the theme here is that, even though we're not all born to be fighters, or that, some of us are weak, it's that, hey, when there are people that we want to protect, we fight to protect them. So we pretty much practice this by getting rid of some rift hounds that are nearby, and so Kochita comes back to her senses after that. The third one is interesting. So we have this really Giga Chad, jacked, ripped guy, Ogdolin, and he thinks that, hey, the tribe is being overrun, and that he's thinking that everyone else is an abyssal monster, so he tries to attack. What I like about this scene in particular is that we kind of get a cool scene with Iansan blocking his fist, blocking his attack. It's kind of like the first appearance we've ever seen from Iansan in the Teyvat story trailer, where she gets introduced into the Natlan arc with her fist, being pumped up. And so it's like, oh, hey, she's using that here to block this big dude's attack. This one is difficult in particular because he just can't really come to his senses. He can't really communicate with everyone. And so, you kind of have to fight muscle with muscle. So then that's why we get Capitano. That's why we get Mr. Il Capitano, the captain, to introduce himself again and then basically explain to us what's going on, in that this is called Abyssal Corrosion syndrome that's affecting the people, which he is saying is coming back after 500 years. He gives us a cure called the Draught of Lucidity, and it basically helps Ogdolin come to his senses, but it comes at the cost of someone having consistent migraines for the rest of their lives. That's a risk that they're willing to accept. What's really interesting about this is that he explains that this medicine was created by one of his subordinates, his second in command, Guthred, the person we saw in the last arc that was possessing Ororon. And I thought it was really interesting because, like, one of my first thoughts that came into play was, I was like, hey, wait, could this be related to Dottore in some way? Because, well, Dottore is a doctor and he loves to experiment on people. So it seems like this kind of medical intervention, this kind of medicine, could be something that he serves up. But I guess the more that we think about it, likely that Capitano shouldn't be associating himself with Dottore's methods because he would find them dishonorable, similar to how he found Signora's methods to be dishonorable. So it's very likely the case that this is not Dottore related, although there could be a plot point in the future about that, but I don't think that they would push Capitano to be associating himself with Dottore. And before I talk more about Capitano, I just want to talk a little bit about Iansan, which I'm sure she's going to be released as a playable character and probably have a bigger role in 5.3 Archon Quest. But it seems like her story is that even though Iansan has been born like as a small person, she still has power, and that's why she's able to inherit her ancient name. And much of her childhood likely has just been people probably bullying her and saying that, hey, you're so small, you don't deserve to have this ancient name. So there likely was some kind of bullying that she had to overcome, to get to the place that she is today, because she's been very insightful and reflective, very mature, the things that she says in this act. Yeah, as for Capitano, I think that Hoyoverse is really pushing at humanizing Capitano. If the previous acts weren't enough, they're even pushing him more because they're pretty much furthering his relationship with the Traveler and Paimon, because it gets to the point where he even just shows his face. Even though we don't get to see it, it's implied that it's pretty much disfigured and just horribly looking. Yeah, the last act sort of ended with Capitano talking to the Lord of the Night, and that he was put on this journey by the Ruler of Death long ago, so there's a relationship there that's waiting to be fleshed out more. I think it's very fascinating that Renova, right, the Ruler of Death, is able to have free will over people's death. Like, just the amount of omnipotence that this ruler has over people, like being able to affect Capitano and such, is really fascinating, and can set her up to be a big antagonist in the future, or even an ally in the future. Anyways, yeah, I really hope Capitano becomes playable soon, and I really do wonder what kind of conflict he may introduce to us, because even though he is working with us, he does remind the Traveler that hey, even though they're working together, their goals may not be necessarily aligned, so there could be some tension and such around that. Alright, and finally we end the act basically with Iansan telling us, hey, to come back to the Stadium of Sacred Flame, because Xilonen is pretty much ready to creating our ancient name, so she gets pretty much everyone involved to tell stories about the Traveler, and of course it's Paimon, the one that takes the longest to tell the stories, because, Paimon always is the biggest yapper of Genshin Impact. But yeah, anyways, so we're pretty much ending the act with getting ready to finally get the ancient name, because that'll be a big part in helping to end the war between Natlan and the Abyss. So yeah, that was pretty much the end of the interlude. And again, as a summary, I liked the NPCs that we were helping, because they told the themes of overcoming your trauma, fighting to protect the people you love in a succinct and concise way, so I liked the storytelling there. It was very, I don't necessarily relate to all of their experiences, but it is always therapeutic seeing people overcoming their challenges and traumas of the past. So yeah, I liked the storytelling there. It didn't beat around the bush, there was no padded or wasted dialogue, so I was pretty happy with that. And then, yeah, some Capitano lore is always nice to hear. But yeah, I want to end this video just talking about some of the lore we got on the Xbox glider. So first things first is that, yeah, if we don't know, since with version 5.2, Genshin is now on Xbox Series X and S, so they have a exclusive wind glider for that, which everyone will be able to get in version 5.3. And it's very interesting because this wind glider in particular, which is called Wings of Fate's Course Intertwined, I don't know why, but they decided to put some very interesting lore onto the glider, so I just want to go over it real quick. I'm not going to read all of it, but basically what it's talking about is that it's talking about some of Dainsleif's past in Khaenri'ah, how the Traveler's sibling, it talks a bit about how Dainsleif saw the Traveler's sibling come to power and become the successor to the throne of Khaenri'ah, and Dainsleif himself, and how the Traveler's sibling themselves is from like royalty from another world, but then the sibling had lost their world and so came to Teyvat, and so is kind of being put into another royalty position. And it sort of implies that the Traveler's sibling, and probably just like extends to the Traveler themselves, so just like the two twins, they were probably just royalty, and both had to bear the weight of the entire world wherever they were from. And only one of them was now going to start bearing the weight of Khaenri'ah. So going from the ruler of a world to just one nation. So what's really interesting now is that, okay, so after Dainsleif gets promoted from being a young knight to getting the Twilight Sword title, the last king of Khaenri'ah, so the last Vinster king, had been bringing the sibling down to the kingdom's deepest depths. And this was after the events of the Five Sinners, because this section here talks about how Dainsleif had followed along to try and save his older brother, the sinner that we know, Vedolfonr, because the sinner had been imprisoned and blinded in both eyes, likely related to just being a sinner and grasping the power of the abyss. Here's the big twist, I guess, or reveal, is that basically the Traveler's sibling was being used as a vessel to contain as much abyss energy as possible in order to become the key that would nearly annihilate the entire world, which is huge because, okay, and it ends with how, okay, this was like the moment where this is like telling a story of Dainsleif and the sibling, how the sibling is going from, the light and royalty to the darkness of the abyss, whereas Dainsleif was likely just coming up from the darkness, being born not royalty and making his way up, becoming the Twilight Sword and such. I think the biggest revelation here for me is this whole part about the sibling being a vessel for abyssal power, because this directly relates to the Traveler, because by implication, if the sibling is able to become a vessel, then that means that the Traveler is able to become a vessel themselves as well. So all of the times that we've been shown, quote-unquote cleansing abyssal energy, like when we first helped the Dvalin out in Mondstadt, trying to like purify Dvalin stone, and then now recently in Natlan, how when people were corrupted with abyssal energy, the Traveler has been trying to purify the abyssal energy. And it's like, oh, okay, we might have thought that the Traveler just has some power that can negate the energy, but all of these interactions with the abyssal energy could just have been them just absorbing the abyssal power unknowingly themselves, thinking that they're purifying the energy, but that really they're just absorbing it as a vessel. So I could see a future where the storytelling heads in a way that shows Traveler themselves absorbing so much abyssal energy to the point that later on they can surface abyssal types of abilities and powers. And perhaps this is exactly what maybe the last Vinster King wants, or maybe it relates to how the Five Sinners wants this to happen. They want the Traveler, or the sibling, or maybe both of them, to just bear so much abyssal power and then bring about the annihilation of the world or whatever. So basically, when the Traveler is purifying abyssal energy, it could be the case that they're pretty much just absorbing it themselves and just harboring all of this abyssal energy. And I hope that that comes into the story somehow. So yeah, very interesting lore. Just wanted to share that real quick. And yeah, that's basically it for this video. Yeah, I'm just excited for more of the story. So yeah, 5.3 we'll get maybe the last parts of Natlan's Archon quest with the finale. So yeah, we'll see what happens. And yeah, and as always, thank you for watching this video, and catch you next time. Wait, that's it? Oh, that's it. Oh shit, that was really short. Bro, wait, I thought I thought we were gonna like do some quest to travel the land here. Oh, that's probably part of the tribal chronicles. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. Okay.